call to order. You want to do a roll call?
Yes.
Have we been live this whole time?
Yes.
Okay.
But they'll cut the beginning part out of the recording. So. Great. All right. Committee member Wall.
Present.
Thank you. Committee member Simon.
Here.
Committee member Lang.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Curtis can make this meeting, and committee member Alden.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Ruiz.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Johnson.
Here.
Great.
You do the salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items. Do we have any public?
Do not have any public online today.
Oh. Okay. Maybe you want to introduce our new committee members?
Yes, so this is the committee's first meeting of the fiscal year. So we have some new members to introduce. We have 2 new members, as well as committee member Simon was reappointed for another 2-year term, which will be ending in June 2025. So the 2 new members are Karen Lang and Patrick Burtis. Patrick couldn't make it today, but we have Karen Lang online. So welcome, and welcome to say a few words, introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. Did you want us to introduce ourselves? I can't hear quite well.
Yeah, please do.
Can you not hear? Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear just it's a little garbled. Yeah. Okay, did you want me to go first?
Yeah, so our other new committee member wasn't able to make it today, so you're our only new committee member that's actually here today. So yes, if you'd like to just introduce yourself briefly.
Sorry, okay, I apologize here. Yes, Karen Lang, and I've lived in Corte Madera for 11 years and have a background in energy. Half my career I worked for PG&E, half my career I worked as a consultant doing other things. Very impressed with the reports I've read, and very supportive of the building codes as I understand them. Hopefully I've read the changes, but I think that's really commendable that the town is stepping up.
Thank you, Karen.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Should we just go around the table and just do a quick 2-sentence introduction of each other? For Karen?
Sure. I'm Phil Simon. I'm a retired building contractor who I've lived in. I was born and raised in Corte Madera and did construction work up and down the West Coast for most of my career, ending at Sea Ranch, and I've been back in Corte Madera for about 10 years.
And the Simon Ranch is one of the most beautiful pieces of property in our town.
Gorgeous.
And Martin, why don't you go next?
Hi, Martin Wall. I had my initial career was in data product management, and then I got involved with a biodiesel plant in Richmond, California, and had a stint with some other outfits in renewable energy, and am now retired from that, but active in the committee. And here I'm in New Hampshire right now, and I'm active with our lake committee that's keeping the place clean so it doesn't go the way of Clear Lake. So anyway.
I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Amy Ruiz, and I have been living in Corte Madera 10 plus years. I have 2 teenage daughters that go to Redwood. And I've been part of the committee since we started it 3 years ago. And it's really been a pleasure and very cool to see where we've come and the support from the town. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Yes, next month, hopefully.
Hi, Karen. I'm so glad you're joining us. I'm Leslie Alden. I've been lived in Corte Madera since 1982. And have a checkered past and a zigzaggy career, but spent 13 and a half years working in energy policy, working for 2 elected county supervisors here in Marin. And in that role was part of the group that started the first community choice aggregation program in the state, Marin Clean Energy, now MCE Clean Energy. And I left that role a couple of years back and started a nonprofit to develop a regional network of networks and resource library online and with lots of social media and partnerships to bring in the average person everywhere in the Bay Area to find a way that they can engage in getting off of fossil fuels. That's our focus. And I'm really, it's been just a real joy to be with in Corte Madera all these years and see the changes, and to go from that kind of big policy perspective in the Bay Area to really right down here in the weeds, so to speak, in my own community, and serving with this group for several years. I think it's been more than 3.
I'm losing time.
I know.
I said it, I was like,
I think it's been more like 4 or 5,
Okay.
but we became official about a year ago when the council did what they do to make us official. But we're really happy to have you join us, and excited to keep working on these projects at the local level. David.
Karen, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm an architect and a planner. I've lived in Corte Madera for 23 years. I was on the planning commission for 2 terms, and now I'm active in this way. Action, Climate Action Committee. We'd like to underscore that word action. My career has been as an architect and a planner. I was a partner in a global practice on leading sustainable development. And along the way, I was able to consult for about a year to a company called PG&E on their offerings in sustainable communities. So got to know the ins and outs of PG&E as they were at that point in time. So maybe we overlap there a little bit. But welcome. And it's too bad that our other new member can't be here to benefit, but we'll take a couple minutes and go around again, I think, next time. Phoebe, how are we going to do? So that's number 3. How are we going to do item 4?
Yeah, so,
Election of a chair and a vice chair.
right. So this is just standard protocol for all boards of the first meeting of the new fiscal year. And so you can either select a new chair or vice chair, or reconfirm your current chair or vice chair. Just be looking for a nominee and then a motion and a second.
So we self-nominate.
Yes, exactly. Typically, I think the chair will ask for nominations and take it from there.
It's the first time we've done this,
Yeah.
Karen, so we're still figuring it out.
So I think it makes sense to do it one at a time.
Okay, I'll accept self-nominations from any of the members.
Can we just nominate you?
Or, do we have any self-nominations for vice chair or chair?
anybody want to take vice chair?
I can't do it this year. I just can't.
I have no problem continuing as chair, and I can nominate myself as chair.
Great.
It's not that, hasn't been that onerous, and I really appreciate working with BB and staff a little bit, so. I'll nominate myself for chair.
You have a second?
Do I have a second?
I
will
second it.
Unanimous acclaim.
Thirds and fourths.
And I will nominate Amy for vice chair.
I like being vice chair, but I would like to give someone else an opportunity. Like you, Phil, or Martin.
Does anybody want to take vice chair? I think we love you.
We do, we do, if you don't mind.
Okay, I will take it. Thank you.
I feel like we're just getting going and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
some continuity will be good.
Okay.
So we have a nomination and do I have a second? Just to make
Second on
sure?
Amy. Yeah.
Second by
Thank
Amy.
you.
So I'll accept a motion.
I move that we reappoint Dave Johnson and Amy Rose as chair and vice chair of our committee.
I second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That was easy enough. Okay. Great. It is really fun working with Phoebe and staff. It's fun. Item number 5 is approval of the meeting minutes from our June 21st meeting. They were in the packet. Are there any points of discussion or any correction? Can I get a motion to approve?
I will
Motion
move
to approve.
There we go.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The meeting minutes, June 21st are approved. General business, discussion of the draft reach codes amending Title 24, the California Building Standards Code to enhance building electrification and electric vehicle charging infrastructure requirements and renovations. It was attachment 6A. Phoebe?
Thank you. So this item is bringing back to this committee some of the updates that we've had on the Green Building Code topic since this was last discussed at this committee at the May 31st meeting. So since then, staff have drafted the codes and brought them to the Planning Commission at their July 11th meeting. And we also have some new legal analysis from the town attorney, which has impacted the timeline for this project. So this item is really just to update the committee on that and ask for any additional feedback that you'd like to provide at this time. So these were the 4 code changes that the committee, we covered at the May 31st
Can you minimize
meeting.
the,
Yeah.
or, I'm sorry.
Good. Over there.
Thank you.
I would do it, but I don't know how.
Thank you very
I
much.
think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's this new OWL setup. We have different
Yeah.
computers and control of the
I'm not gonna
screens.
do that next time. I think it's.
You've got to go in there to do it.
It's on the laptop, yeah. Okay, so these are the 4 code changes that were discussed at the May 31st meeting. The first 2 are the portions of the county's remodel code that Corte Madera has not adopted. And the second 2 are additional changes that staff are considering to better align our codes with what other jurisdictions in the county are doing, as well as further the town's climate goals. So we have the energy reach code for single family renovations of 750 square feet or more, the additional EV charging requirements for renovations, the expansion of the town's existing all electric ordinance for new construction to apply to substantial remodels of 50% demolition or more, and preventing the expansion of natural gas infrastructure in single family homes. So those are the 4 codes that this committee has already seen, and I'll just go through some of the changes that we've made or that we've been considering since that last meeting, which are really only to the EV requirement. For the single family renovations reach code, this was an area that the committee expressed some interest in going beyond the county's model code, and staff did evaluate some different options for doing so, but we felt that we didn't have enough data about how many projects this code was going to impact as it's currently written, so we didn't feel comfortable making modifications to it at this time, and opted to leave it in the draft ordinance. It is in the same form as it is in the county's model code.
So just a reason, so that's identical to the county's code.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the scoring. It's essentially what we were discussing last time. We'll just keep it the same as the county. Got it. Okay.
Quick question though, the lack of data, I think we've heard several comments from staff over several meetings that there just aren't that many projects that are anticipated from a historical trend. So at what point would staff feel like there was enough data to make a determination on this?
So the projects that we don't think, or the code that we don't think is going to impact many projects, is that 50% threshold. And that we do have some data based on our fire sprinkler permits,
Right.
because they have a 50% threshold. And we think that the 50%, the definition of a 50% demolition that we're considering for the all electric ordinance is even a stronger requirement, or a harder threshold to meet than what's in the fire code. So we think it's actually going to impact even fewer projects than what the fire code impacts, which is about 12 projects a year. For this one, we are really just making our best estimate based on, the permits that are coming in. I think part of implementing this code, if we are able to go forward with it, would be having a better way of tracking that data. And right now, it's not tracked in a way that's easily pulled out of the system and able to analyze. So as part of this process, we'd be looking at, of course, of the way to calculate that 750 amount and making sure that's tracked, which would provide some more data on the size of the projects that are coming in.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So in terms of adopting county requirements, are the county requirements for unincorporated areas? So in other words, who supersedes who? Is it because we're a town, we need our own?
Yes, that's right. So the county's requirements only apply to unincorporated
Areas, okay. And the 50% demolition, is it clear to homeowners? It's not clear to me what that means, like if they sort of gut it but don't demolish it. Is it, I didn't look at the code per se, but is it clear to a homeowner that, what they would need to do to fall underneath that regulation?
That's a good question. That's one of the comments we got at the Planning Commission as well. And these are the 3 more detailed thresholds that describe what that 50% is. And it is a pretty extensive remodel. And we looked at in the Planning Commission presentation, if you go to the link in the staff report for that, there's some examples of projects that would meet these thresholds, and they're very large projects. So removing over 50% of wall coverings and existing walls, that's a high bar to meet. 50% of wall and roof framing being removed or altered, and then the proposed conditioned floor area is doubling. So essentially adding a second story or adding a large addition.
It's not clear to me, is this any one of these would trigger it? Okay.
Yeah, any one of these thresholds. And you're right that they are sort of complicated and would likely require some design professional as well as staff review to determine whether a project would meet these thresholds.
And why the 50%?
Yeah, the 50% was the most common threshold among other jurisdictions that have this sort of language in their code. So staff surveyed other jurisdictions that have an all electric requirement, and 50% was the most common threshold for requiring substantial B models to be all electric.
And Adam, I think you could, it also synchronizes with the interpretation on the fire code for sprinklers as well. Plus or minus.
Somewhat, yeah, it's a little, I'll let PB answer that one, actually. It's a little different. They're using floor area in terms of if your project or renovation affects 50% of the floor area of the existing structure, then yes, you're going to kick into fire sprinkler requirements. This one is based on total for the wall coverings, total linear footage of interior and exterior partitions. So it's just a different methodology.
And the reason for that is that these are conditions where staff felt, and this definition was developed with guidance from our previous building official. These are scenarios where staff felt that it's really easy to install the wiring needed to go all electric, because in all these cases, there's a significant amount of modification happening to the structure. A lot of walls are open. That's a case where it's easy to put that wiring in.
And if I recall, this would then trigger, it's enough change happening within the home that support all electrification, meaning that the kitchen might be affected or the HVAC or, right? This is what we,
Right.
okay,
Everything's affected
in something like this.
And even in this case, if with the way that the code is written, if they wanted to keep their gas range, they can, right?
No,
If the
not
points-
in this case. So a project that meets one of these three thresholds would be required to comply with the town's existing all electric ordinance, which only has exemptions for commercial kitchens to keep natural gas, as well as, I think, essential service buildings and multifamily buildings can have backup generators.
So a 50% redo would qualify as new construction. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what we can expect is a lot of 49% redos.
Yeah.
Because people will go to extraordinary measures to avoid this. Would it make more sense for us to go through the objections that were raised by the Planning Commission, because they're all over this, and the other things too, because that's, because we could spend a lot of time going over this again and then coming up with the same things they did. And
Ninth Circuit decision impacted pretty heavily too. I think maybe he's gonna get there.
okay, well, let's hear that too.
Yeah, so I was, before we get to that, I was just gonna cover the changes that have been made since the committee last saw these. So in the EV reach code for the multifamily and non-residential renovation project, staff are proposing, based on community feedback that was received, to eliminate the option to comply by installing conduit only in cases where the parking lot surface is modified. So instead of, the county's model code has these two options for when a parking lot surface is modified by removing paving in a multifamily or non-residential property. The project can either install the housing for wiring, raceway, or conduit in 50% of exposed parking spaces, or conduit to 20% and charging stations to 5%. And we got some community feedback that community wanted to see actual charging stations installed in a scenario like that. So we're considering eliminating that first option and just having the requirement be, if you are modifying your parking lot, you need to install at least 5% charging stations to the exposed spaces only.
Would that be modifying, you said by removing pavement,
Right. So if the pavement is removed,
not by doing a slurry seal or something?
right, correct, not by surface treatments.
And actually, one of the just another comment on that, I don't know if we'll get into, it, but one of the planning commissioner comments on, we should further define how much
Yeah,
removal of pavement that, if you're just redoing a portion of a curb, so we do have to put some more definition on that, but the intent is there, that essentially if you're exposing paving, to a certain number of spaces are going to be required because you're,
Did
you're
did
already-
the did the other jurisdictions that have adopted this or are considering it, have they had to deal with the same objections and concerns? And have they been able to come up with solutions? Or do we have anything to go on here, or do we have to start tabula rasa with this?
To my knowledge, none of the other jurisdictions that have adopted this requirement have made any modifications to it. And
So their planning commissions didn't have these concerns, is that correct?
yeah, I don't know what process the other jurisdictions went through in the evaluating these codes, but I don't believe that any of them modified this.
but this is a recommendation from public.
Right, as well as the planning commission. So. And then the other change that we're considering here is to the second trigger, or the first trigger, which is when the service panel is modifying. We're considering developing a valuation trigger for commercial properties instead of that trigger. And just in considering some multi-tenant situations where there's large shared parking lots and it would be difficult to require one tenant having a panel upgrade to add electrical capacity for 20% of on-site parking spaces. So that's still under development. That's something we're thinking about there. And then the 50% threshold, there's no change here to what the committee's seen before. It's just a little bit more detail on what specifically that threshold would be in the draft code. And based on the feedback that the committee provided at the May meeting, we did not include any new exemptions for this project type. So a substantial remodel being required to electrify under this code. This is just a modification to our existing all electric ordinance. So the same exemptions that are in there would apply to these projects, but not any new ones. And the same for the prohibition on expanding natural gas infrastructure. The committee felt that the portable propane appliances, outdoor appliances would fill many of the needs that might have been considered for exception. So.
Like if somebody had an emergency generator for medical reasons, they could handle that with propane, which is very common.
Right. Yeah, or even a portable natural gas generator would be allowed.
Was that brought up? I noticed that the planning commission had objections about, the generators. Was it mentioned to them that you could use propane for the generators?
and electric generators. There are electric battery generators
Right.
as well.
Yes, there are. But that doesn't seem to have, they didn't consider that. They're just talking about having to have it be for natural gas. Anyway.
Right. I can't recall if that was included in the staff report for that meeting.
We did discuss
We
propane for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
we
was in the
did
notes.
Well,
discuss.
for outdoor heating and barbecues and that sort of thing. But when they're talking about generators, I don't know if that was, it seems like that could be dealt with as well. We thought it
Right.
could. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, we did discuss other backup options like PG&E's program for customers that rely on medical devices they have a portable battery program. We discussed solar and battery backup, EV, vehicle to home. But yes, so that was one of the comments from the planning commission. There was interest in exemptions for a couple appliances, not just generators, also gas cooktops and gas fireplaces. These sort of, I think the commission described as luxury appliances that some residents really want to have in their homes. I think some of the other, a lot of the feedback that was received was focused on needing some additional details about portions of the code or how the code would be applied. For example, in the EV code, the amount of paving removal that would qualify or would cause a space to be considered exposed for the purpose of the ordinance, as well as the impact on ADA requirements of having additional EV spaces. There was concern about the cost of these code changes.
Just on one, if I can, just on the one on the parking, I think the concern was that there would be requirements for ADA EV parking spots and by the code, and the additional space that is required to create this additional ADA space would then reduce the overall number of spaces in the parking lot, thereby dipping that total number below what zoning requires. How do you deal with that? Those sorts of
So there,
questions.
yeah, I did research that
Yeah.
question since the meeting, and that one ADA EV space counts as 2 standard parking spaces for the purpose of requiring, complying with parking requirements.
Is that it's from the state? Oh,
Yeah, from the
okay.
state law. So that particular concern may be
Bonus.
issue.
Also going forward, not immediately, but we'll have more autonomous vehicles dropping people off, and will hopefully need less in the way of parking space, parking lots.
Mhm.
Potentially.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we have current local code.
Right.
So you either, that controls right now, I mean, so it's just making sure that if we're affecting this, we have to make sure that we're thinking
Right.
about maybe having to modify our other ordinances related to parking.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, in this case, state law would override local zoning with respect to parking for that particular ADA issue. So.
So the cost concern was another major feedback area, particularly for the 50% demolition threshold. Commissioner noted that there's other town requirements that kick in with a remodel of that size, that the cost of those requirements together do add up. And also on the EV readiness requirement for single family homes, which is for projects that include a service panel, the home is required to be EV ready, which involves having the capacity in the panel as well as the wiring to a designated parking space. And commissioners noted that depending on the location of the panel and the intended charging space, the wiring costs might be a lot more expensive than intended. So that they proposed including a hardship exemption for cases like that, and that there is a exemption in the EV code, but it's a little vague. So we're evaluating, whether that would apply to that situation.
Yeah, it seems important to define what undue hardship is.
Yeah.
And that's very vague. Yeah.
And the commissioners also suggested increasing assistance programs and considering reducing permit fees for electrification projects to address some of the cost concerns. And then finally, several of, or maybe all of the commissioners mentioned a desire to see similar energy renovation requirements for commercial and multifamily properties. We don't have the data specifically on single family versus multifamily emissions, but based on our current greenhouse gas inventory, single or residential properties do account for 14% of emissions from natural gas use versus 5% for commercial. So that's one of the reasons that the county did focus this first renovation reach code on single family homes, but as part of the countywide electrification plan development, we are looking at all aspects of building electrification, all building types. So that is something that we intend to address in the future. And overall, the main takeaway from the planning commission meeting was the majority of the commission felt that these codes needed more work before coming to council. And as we'll cover in the next slide, we unexpectedly have some additional time to work on this. So staff are continuing to refine and consider how to address the commission's comments, and would welcome any feedback that you have on them today. So as noted, the Ninth Circuit Court ruling is affecting the timeline for this project. I think most of the committee members are aware of this case based on a lawsuit that the California Restaurant Association brought against the city of Berkeley in 2019. And a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals this April sided with the Restaurant Association and found that Berkeley's all-electric new construction ordinance was preempted by federal law. And while Berkeley has filed a petition to have this case heard by the full Ninth Circuit, in the meantime, this decision is binding for all jurisdictions within the Ninth Circuit Court, which includes Corte Madera. And so based on the recommendation of our town attorney, staff don't anticipate bringing ordinance to town council until we know the results of this case, and we should know later this fall whether the Ninth Circuit will rehear the case or not. And at that point, we'll decide how to move forward. So in the meantime, staff are going to be continuing to refine these codes so we can move them forward if we can in the future. And also looking at some of the other items on our work plan that are aiming to further these same goals. So continuing the education and outreach work that I've been doing with this committee, working on the EV charging item, identifying more locations for public charging stations and how to encourage other property owners to install EV charging stations. And then also participating in the countywide electrification plan development and looking at next steps for that. So any questions or additional feedback that the committee wants to provide?
I have just some feedback, and maybe it's because I'm terrible at right now at navigating the town website, but I tried to find the location of the public charging stations. And I know I can use an app on my phone, but I kept thinking, well, shouldn't it be on the website? And I couldn't find it. Is it there or?
No, we don't have any public charging stations right now.
Okay.
Town operated in any case. That's one of the work plan items for this year, is to look at locations to install public charging stations.
Okay, so when you have locations for additional EV chargers, that just means additional chargers that would come from Corte Madera. Okay. I guess my one other comment is, I know we're waiting for the ruling on Berkeley, but there was an element to the building codes of preventing additional natural gas hookups. You know, let's say they wanted an outdoor fireplace or whatever. I hope public didn't object to that. I think that's a real opportunity to stop expanding infrastructure, which we know has to decrease.
Yeah, that was also an element that our town attorney felt was risky to advance right now.
Because of I realize it doesn't make that much difference, one little hookup, et cetera, but the cost of the stranded assets for natural gas are pretty intense. So whatever we can do to stop that would be fabulous. I hope the public is aware of that.
That might be an interesting data point to do a little more research on, because that's something as we do outreach would be a really compelling point to highlight. Because cost is an important piece of this, so if we're thinking longer term about the other side. Yeah.
There's certainly, it's public what the gas infrastructure is. I think what's not known is who will bear the burden of the stranded assets. So it's a
Right.
little-
It'll be the ratepayers, most likely. A couple of comments from the planning commission. It concerns me that they'd like to see some of these particular appliances exempted, and I think that we need to work go a little bit more deeply on that. Yes, outdoor fireplaces and gas cooktops are maybe considered luxury items. I don't think they are. I think that we really need to be encouraging people to move from gas stoves to induction stoves, which are actually much better for cooking anything. So I think we need to take a look at their suggestions on what appliances should be exempted and why. And they brought up cost, and that does keep coming up. What we're talking about is remodels that are 50%, right, or more. And the little ones, is there a way, the little changes that a family might make in their single family home, is there a way, we brought this up before, of lowering or reducing or eliminating some of the fees for some of these smaller things? If you want to do, take out your gas stove and put in an electric cooktop, an induction cooktop instead, the health issues around that are compelling. And I want to keep encouraging that sort of transition and not add that as an exemption on some list that's being, perhaps created and considered. And I think we should, you mentioned bidirectional home charging, but I think when it comes to backup, I think we also need to let people know, and this is part of the outreach and education, to have more awareness that there is such a thing as a portable electric generator. People are running out and buying generators because they're afraid of the shutoffs, the power shutoffs. They should also know that there's an alternative to a gas or diesel generator. So,
I had two comments and questions. One sort of building off of Leslie's, which is around the cost, perhaps not for the larger remodels, but for people that might need more support and in easing that burden, if it is a burden, to make the transition for whatever reason that is maybe forced at the time or they want to. And so we talked about permit fees, which I think are important and some substantial in some ways. I wonder, and I don't know enough about this, which is why I'm asking, are there grants or other pots of money that we could tap, that we could have as reserves to help make sure we're moving our complete community, or everyone in our community in the right direction, and giving financial support where needed? And so my question is really around where are there pots, and how do we apply for them?
Yeah, I don't know if there's additional grant money that the town could access and distribute, but there is a lot of money out there right now. And I didn't go into extensive detail with the planning commission on that. But I did in the staff report a little deeper dive in the staff report for the planning commission, and the funds that are available right now and the additional funds that are expected to be coming out later this year. The Inflation Reduction Act rebate portion, the tax credits are available now, but there's additional rebates that will be coming out, are really substantial, and I think do bring the costs down significantly, especially for lower income residents. So I think the town can definitely play a role there in helping people access those rebates. And that's also something that's being looked at the countywide level as part of this land development. How do we help point people in those directions? So it's easier for them to find them.
There are a couple of good tools, and the Air District is really looking at trying to create a one-stop shop. You know, not a concierge service exactly, but to make it much simpler. And we've talked about this as well. A couple of times there is the switches on, which is fairly good. And there are some others as well. But yeah, I think that making it easier for people to do what is in their best interest ultimately is as much a challenge of education and outreach. And that's coming from lots of different directions, but we certainly have a role to play there. So, yeah.
Okay,
The-
so.
I think it's 3 points. Communicating back to the planning commission for their consideration, their role in community health and the cost or the risk and the hazard of exposure from gases inside the home. If it wasn't surfaced by the planning commission in their previous discussions, I think that just like I think government officials have a obligation to protect the health and wellness of the community. I think this is one. I think that could be brought into this discussion. The other one was if we maybe for consideration would be if a applicant volunteers to go above and beyond, is there a carrot that could be brought into this, and that some of the fees could be waived if they electrify to a greater degree than they would otherwise be needed to? You know, can we provide a carrot instead of just exemptions and sticks?
Yeah.
So that'd be my second comment. Then the third comment was, I love what Karen brought up about consideration of gas as a stranded asset and who's going to pay. Since planning commission is considering cost, and I think that it's I think it's agreed upon that the cost of gas is going to go up as decarbonization becomes more prevalent. So in these considerations of cost, gas appliances in the future and use of gas in the future is going to be more expensive than using electric. So that could be brought into the discussion as well.
I think that's sorry, go ahead.
Karen?
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought it was a great suggestion to have a carrot. I mean, if we can waive some town building permits, if for increasing levels of electrification, I think that would be a great incentive.
I agree, Karen. I think we should be pro electrification. And when applicants come in and want to electrify, we should find a way to help them out with that. And I know the fees are small, but and Adam just loves to waive fees.
No, I just wanted to say, so I electrified my bathroom, and I think because I didn't quite understand the quick process versus the other. Anyway, I think the permit was $1,500 or something. I mean, hey, if you just shaved $500 off it, I would have really appreciated it. But yeah, no, they're not insignificant.
I was going to ask that. What is the average fee for what we're talking about here for that kind of permitting?
It depends. I mean, no, I mean, you can't just, there's no average. It depends on what you're doing.
So I imagine that for bigger projects, it's more expensive, right? I mean, makes sense. So does the town enjoy additional revenues in the future because of increased property values from these improvements? And could you determine that the net present value of those increased tax revenues might offset these fees, for example? Just a thought.
That's a great thought. I wanted to call out on page 6 of your staff report to the Planning Commission. This second paragraph talks about San Mateo County's Office of Sustainability there. I was part of the initial, I guess, stakeholder group, but Susan Wright and San Mateo County Office of Sustainability did an amazing program. They had 10 different home sites, single family homes of different sizes. And it looks like this is just great research. The cost estimates range from to do an all electric, to convert an existing building to all electric, estimates from just about $3,000 for a single story, 1,000 square foot home for low income to $25,000, give or take, 24,000 for a 2,000 square foot home that was doing kind of everything. So it just, there is a lot of research out there. There's work that's been done in the Bay Area that's comparable. So I think we could use that type of, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take something that's comparable and apply it to what we're trying to sort through here as well. But I think they did a really great job as they worked through that whole scenario with various stakeholders and the homeowners.
Yeah, I agree. Those case studies are really well done.
Regarding the Ninth Circuit's decision, that revolves around addressing the issue of gas appliances and how they are rated. And they're not concerned with the health benefits, like David brought up. So is there a way to demonstrate, just empirically that the gas appliances are unhealthy?
Yes, that data is out there.
And use that as the vehicle to promote prohibiting the use of gas.
So that is what Berkeley did. They used that health and safety justification for their ordinance. What the case was about was the Federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act, which regulates the energy efficiency of appliances. And it says no one else can, the federal government sets those standards. No one else can set more stringent standards than the federal government when it comes to energy efficiency of appliances. And the court decision essentially found that Berkeley's ordinance was affecting the energy use of these appliances, and they found that it was preempted. So under the current ruling, no, we can't use the health and safety justification. It'll still be preempted.
We can talk about it though, as a way to encourage people to make that transition. It's not something that you can codify. Right. Totally get that. But we can certainly use that data because it's very strong and it's very available and current and co-located here in the Bay Area. There's a lot of really good data here. So that's, again, part of the outreach and education just for the general public. It's like, did you know? So, yeah.
I'm wondering if education combined with incentives would, if we can have more stringent building codes, if that would at least help.
There are rebates, even if the town can't offer incentives, there are rebates for changing out.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also want, and that would be good to somehow put on the website if you're aware of them. I'm not aware. I also just, maybe Phoebe, you can clarify for me. It's my understanding that in terms of, air quality, it's the Air Resources Board that has jurisdiction, but they only have jurisdiction over space and water heating because that affects, burning that goes outside the home.
Yes,
They do not have jurisdiction over cooking, which is inside the home.
exactly,
So-
that's true.
So therefore, even when they step in, this air, I don't know who has jurisdiction over health inside the home. Is that the town?
That's a good question. I think there have been some analyses done of sort of alternative methods related to, using a similar jurisdiction as the air district has, regulating air quality rather than energy. But those are still sort of in the initial stages of legal analysis.
And for BAAQMD, when is the prohibition on bringing gas appliances into the state? When does that kick in?
It's not all appliances. It's to Karen's point, it's the roadmap. There'll be a staff report in January of 25 about an implementation plan. And then I know it's 18 months away. I mean, it's close. It'll be here before you know it. The prohibition on selling and installing gas furnaces it's water heaters in 27 and furnaces in 29.
It says nothing about stoves, right?
No, it's got nothing about stoves. Your stoves are fine. But to Karen's point.
So is smoking cigarettes, by the way. That's fine.
Absolutely.
No, I'm serious. You can't
No,
regulate. You can't regulate what people do in their homes. I mean, they want to smoke cigarettes. It's fine. We may disagree.
The thing is, it's very costly to keep a gas system running to service a stove. Yeah.
That's true. I think, Karen, your point about stranded assets, and since you've come from that part of the world, I'd like to learn as much as I could about stranded assets, what that means, what the forecast is, because we have a vague idea of what a stranded asset means. You can't run that gas well anymore, but I'd like to see some more context around that. So if you have any material about that, I'd love to have it and see if we can't make that more immediate for people to react to, because the concept of it sounds like an obscure accounting issue, like depreciation, and not something that's going to slap us around. So if you have stuff, I'd love to see it. That's all.
Sure, I'll see what's public. Again, the issue isn't that there won't be stranded assets. The issue is who will absorb it.
And and what it means. What does that really mean, a stranded asset, from that standpoint? And what cost needs to?
Yeah, it's pipelines, but and yes, sure. I'll see what I can find. What's publicly available. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then can I ask just two more questions to follow up on that last slide? One is, knowing that a decision is going to come in the fall at some point, what is the timeline to rework some of these recommendations around the codes?
So staff are going to be continuing to work on refining the codes essentially now, and keep working on that until we have a more final version, and then we'd hold on to that until we hear whether or not we're going to be able to move forward with them, and then make decisions after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the point where this is helpful feedback with respect to the planning commission's comments. We have the task of sort of trying to see what we can tweak or adjust. What are the comments that make sense? What are the ones that we can respond to and say, look, we heard that comment, but are not going to do X because of Y. But I'd like to wrap that up and finish that part of the process and say, look, we've done outreach on what the best reach codes are for the town on these four, these areas that PB's identified and done a great job of explaining, which is not
Yes. Mhm.
incredibly challenging. And then really, we're just waiting to bring that back when we get the sort of the green light to move this forward, and when it makes sense to spend more time actually going through the formal process of going back to the committee for recommendation of
Okay.
ordinance, and then taking it to the town council for adoption. But I would like to wrap up and say, like, we've done our community outreach refinement and process and sort of get that to the point. And that's what we're hoping with this meeting. After this meeting, the feedback we get, we sort of can get the draft to a point where it's more fine-tuned, essentially, and answering some of the questions that we may have more work to do on, sort of doing a little bit more research so we can have better responses to some of the comments we've heard, but like to sort of just wrap that piece of it up.
Great, just because fall's murky, right? And you want to be able to go and.
Yeah, and also it's the type of thing you can constantly
Fine tune.
tinker and fine tune, and we need to sort of try to get it to what we feel like is a good finished product. I don't think we're gonna skip it. I think it's all valuable information and feedback that we're getting. And it's just a matter of being able to respond to it, and then either in for example, a staff report, these comments are going to be carried forward, whether it's they don't die, they just sort of come forward, but we want to be able to thoughtfully respond to them. And some of that is being done tonight, helping staff sort of be able to put that into like the final staff report that we have for the reach code ordinance adoption staff report. And others will just work on as well internally, but hopefully that we can get that to a point. I would like to do that by we're basically middle of next month, and try to just
Great.
wrap
So,
that up.
so we haven't actually gone through the draft ordinance yet tonight, and
What we did the
Well,
last
we-
meeting, right?
but we've got sort of the fresh one, right? That and I don't know if all of us have read all the way through it and like looked at the fine print. But I think that it's important that we maybe take a deeper dive on that. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think that especially with two new members, I think it would be helpful to give that a little bit more time. And not, I would suggest that we add this sort of up at the top of the agenda for our August meeting. But that's just my thought on that.
Yeah, so
I would
I
agree
had
with that.
just highlighted the changes that had been made since the last meeting and
Right.
had all of the recordings of the previous presentations linked in the staff report. But if there are specific areas that you want more detail on or want a high level overview.
It's easy enough, isn't it, to, in our next meeting, to just have agendize a review of the language as it's being proposed.
Yeah.
Not a full on, another presentation, but, right off the top, in the exceptions, it's a little bit vague. Number one, under exceptions for applicability in 1301.1, unless overall gas use is reduced or unchanged. I know what that data looks like, but how are we applying that sort of construct around an application? I mean, I think it's difficult to be very, very exacting with taking out one type of appliance and putting another one in to know what the overall gas use is going to be, it's going to be, remain unchanged or reduced. I mean, that's an exception. It's like, how do you quantify that? And there might be a really clear answer to that, but I just don't know what it is. And when we say, replacing with electric has been demonstrated to be technically infeasible or has a disproportionate cost to the project, causing an insurmountable hardship. How do we define an disproportionate cost? I mean, that I think needs some more clarity.
Can I just make
Yeah.
a suggestion? And I
Yeah.
appreciate the comments and where they're coming from. And I think your understanding and expertise on this is really important. I was thinking we were talking about that tonight. So I think it's okay to move it to August, but I'm just want to throw out that maybe there's a more efficient way to do it. Because there seems to be very detailed feedback, which is awesome, but I don't know that we'll cover it
Right.
in a meaningful
In
way
30 minutes, right?
in a group setting. So I know we work one-off with you, Phoebe. Is that a better way to collect the feedback than to?
Yeah,
discuss it?
that would be
Okay.
helpful if you have specific comments or questions to just send them to me directly, because it's hard for me to respond to those in a meeting.
Sure, no,
and do the
absolutely.
Research on that.
I think what I was really asking was just to have that time to do the deep dive on the language. And then, yeah, I mean, if it was with, and I'm thinking of with two new members of this committee, giving those comments to you one-on-one is fine. I mean, just as long as we're able to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe what we can do is say before the next packet goes out, that way if anything comes up and the feedback that you receive that needs to be discussed by this group as a group, then we can tackle it that way. It just might be.
Go faster. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Does that work for you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's just, I'm a little concerned about how significant of the changes we're talking about, and so that we sort of, that's all, but absolutely, I think it's always helpful to have more eyes on code language, because there could be, one person may be able to read something clearly and the other person can, it doesn't make, so that's helpful to have language, eyes on language, clarifications is important, so absolutely.
And some members of this group will be better at that than others, and that.
Don't look at my.
I don't know how effective I'll be in that, but, yeah.
Great.
And then I had just one last question, and maybe this will come up in the August meeting, is around the comments that the planning commission made around commercial and where we might be able to take that.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump right in on that one, because I think our staff's perspective on that is that was really never part of the scope of our initial work. It's an interesting discussion to have, but it's going to open a whole nother area of work for us to consider and have to think about, which is going to, again, made this point to planning commission. We already have sort of a delay. We get too far down the road. We get too, we drag this on too much. We're gonna be into the next scope cycle.
Right.
In another year. So, I think it's Phoebe's made the point also that that's being considered as part of the countywide electrification planning work that's being done countywide. So that would be I've been thinking about the planning commission's discussion about that. That's good comments, but it's outside of the scope of what we're really intending to do on this ordinance.
Okay, so we can't, not for this cycle of what we're working on.
Well, and maybe the countywide, has some ideas and suggestions about that again, can be part of more of a model.
Yeah.
That we, then work consistently across the county then.
Okay, I would love to keep it as on the radar as a priority. I know in the past was especially like the hotel going in and us being a little late to that discussion. I think if we can sort of get ahead of that, even though it's only 5% of the contribution, it's still significant in one fell swoop. So I would just advocate for keeping it top of the list.
Yeah.
Great.
And any other discussion? No? Adam, thanks for pushing so hard on it. 6B.
Should we ask for a public comment on this?
Oh, do we have any public comment?
Not see anyone with their hands raised, so.
Oh, we have people
no
listening
public
in. Huh?
comment at this time.
Cool. And when is the next planning commission hearing on this topic?
The intention was not to go necessarily back to them with another round where they're gonna review again. I wanted to make sure that they did get an opportunity to provide comments and suggestions so that this committee could consider them. And as I said, they will probably be carried through as part of it. And we will take these comments through the rest of the process, and they will live on, but we will be addressing them in sort of the fashion that staff and this committee feels appropriate.
Is the next round of language going to include exceptions?
I think it will include exception, but the language can, we can talk about what that looks like.
When can we have feedback on whether the language should include exceptions?
Well, we've had meetings, so.
Yeah, was
Yeah.
exception specifically, are you thinking of?
Or the exceptions that are diminish the requirements relative to the county standards.
Yeah,
Codes.
some of the comments. We wouldn't be considering, I don't think at this time, changing the exemptions that are in our existing ordinance. That have already been adopted. So some of the planning commission comments were maybe more relative to that. Than the renovation codes and.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay.
Right, so yeah, this committee has sort of already discussed the possibility of including additional exceptions and decided that because there are appropriate alternatives. To not include those, so the draft reflects that and anticipate. making
Okay.
Changes to that. section.
And did we, I'm trying to remember, the county, when we adopted the all-electric reach code in November of last year, was that the same as the countywide?
Yeah,
the county
yes,
I
model?
believe so.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
it's-
same.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the exemption that we're still considering is the feedback about the cost exemptions for the single family EV readiness requirement and whether there's a place for a cost hardship exemption there.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you say that again?
So one of the cost concerns that the planning commission raised was about the EV readiness in single family homes and specifically the wiring requirement if the wiring had to go under the house, for example, to get from the panel to the parking space, or if there was some other reason why that would be much more expensive than just if you had your panel next to your garage and we're just installing the wiring right there for your charging space, that there might be a cost exemption for that. And there is some language in the code around hardships related to electrical utility infrastructure design. And that's actually in the standard base code, but it's just not very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Yeah,
because
thank you
the
so
depth
much.
Of your understanding of all of this is really,
Yeah.
really incredible and it is.
It is.
Vital to the
It really
process.
is.
We're very
Yeah.
lucky to have you and very impressed. Can we move on?
Okay, 6B, Phoebe, we're gonna move on.
Yeah,
Okay, 6B, report on newly adopted requirements for serving on a town advisory board or a committee.
this was included in the packet for this evening, and it's a sort of requirements that this committee has mainly been abiding by already, but now they've been formalized and adopted by town council. And so, for example, the requirement that committee members use their town email for town communications, attendance, those sort of requirements. And now they're all written down, and also for reference for some of our new members as well, that they're all there. And how do you want to?
Yeah, just, I don't want, this isn't reflective of any one board or committee or commission. This is, you know, after, I know the council has been, there's been a number of different things that have arisen that just made it sense to start to just lay out some levels of expectations that the council had for its committee members and advisory bodies and commissions, just so that it was out there, people knew coming into it what to expect, so that we could almost attach this when the, we don't want to discourage anybody from participating and volunteering, and you guys are all volunteers here, spending your time, but at the same time, it was important to sort of just lay that out, so that if there was ever some concern about, you know, related to one of these, there would be sort of more a standard way of actually council recognizing how to take action, you know, in a way that was appropriate. That's all. And so it was really just an informational item. If there was any questions, we could try to help identify or answer them, but more just wanted to this committee to be aware that the council did adopt those. And so what we use at the June 20th meeting, I believe.
I saw it in the packet. I didn't have any questions. Did anybody have any questions?
Not.
Karen and Martin?
No,
Great.
Anything else on that topic? Maybe? No. Okay, moving on to 7, updates and reports from the staff.
Yes, I have that.
Oh, wait, did we need to take public comment on 6B?
We can check. I do not see any members of the public wishing to speak on that item.
No? Okay, let's move on. Staff updates?
So update on the countywide electrification plan. The stakeholder engagement workshops for that will be starting in August. And they're planning to have 2 or 3 of those, and Dave will be participating on behalf of the committee in those workshops. So those are just, yeah. So we're getting some feedback on some of the strategies that we're considering to go in the plan.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm just there for the coffee and pastries.
And then we talked about at the last meeting, working on updating the town's climate action page. So I've made some edits to that. And that page is located under the community tab or resident services tab in the climate and sustainability section. So you can go check that out and see the town's climate actions there. And that's it for my updates.
Maybe just recognize that the 4th of July event was really fun. I think that our table was well represented, and Stevie and staff did a great job again of organizing that. The public that I interacted with, it was really, they had great questions. They were curious. I wish there would have been more people that were that way, but any other comments on the 4th of July?
I really appreciate all the work that Phoebe and Amy did, and Martin, of course. It was, yeah, we had a good time, and I think we can, every time there's sort of this iteration, I think I mentioned we should write everything down that worked and all the things that we want to do differently or better next time. Of course, I didn't do that. But you know, before we get too far away from July 4th, we probably should do kind of a download on what we would do differently. I thought it was great, but we could probably have, you know, some other things, do it slightly differently. But yeah, it was really fun. Children were really engaged, and whoever thought of that kudos because the kids brought their parents over. So kids were coloring and they were spinning the wheel and they were just engaged, and there were little prizes for them, and of course that was a thrill. And they came back for more, and the parents had to come back. So it was, there was a lot of opportunity to engage. So I thought it was really well done. It was fun to do. It was good to see you there too, Adam.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
And
And
Scotty.
we use that with the housing planning discussions and for some of that wheel and the little.
The wheel
yeah,
was
I mean, it's so funny. I mean, little tiny thing that's like cost $10 and but and the coloring as well.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just it actually was great. And then with also that, I think that location just is
That was great.
right.
That's really great.
Prime spot there. The beer line and
yeah.
music behind you. It's really a nice spot for us. So
And the music was great.
Yeah, and thanks Phoebe for all the work that went into that.
Yeah.
I think I said something about a bubble machine to get kids over and they were like, how about grocery bags? And
Yeah.
so you had a lot of really creative ideas and I think it really worked. And I
Well,
think
thank you all for volunteering.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say for feedback on what can be improved, either send it to me or Martin or Phoebe. That way we're interacting in the right way between subcommittees. I think it's truly valuable to think about what works and where we can improve. I think the trick always is there's so much to talk about. How do you keep it simple and catchy? And we've talked about several other things today that I think should be in the booth, but then how do you make it digestible for people?
Right.
So,
Right.
but I think it overall was a really good event. So thank you.
I think I distracted us a little bit there, but that was fun. Any updates, reports from committee? Oh, what are you doing with staff?
Yes.
Any updates from committee members individually?
I have one comment I wanted to make. A couple of meetings ago, there was a member of the public here who, and he sent an email as well to all of us. And I really appreciated his comment. He was concerned about really the focus on EVs and the electrification of everything. And his point, I think, was everyone can do something and we should be encouraging people to do whatever they can do. And I wanted to, I guess, publicly reassure him that that is in fact the messaging of this committee, that everyone has a role to play. The town of Corte Madera can make a world of difference, and everyone can do whatever it is they want to do and are capable, whatever their resources are. And that includes time and energy, not just money. I think that it's really important to encourage everyone. So I wanted to thank him for making that comment publicly at a meetings ago and for also sending us the email. It's an important point, and I didn't want him to feel like we didn't hear that.
Yeah, I agree. And we took that feedback when he gave us those comments a couple of meetings ago. We actually revised our checklist to make sure there were actions that people could take at different levels. So we heard it and we incorporated it. So
Yeah.
please keep the feedback coming. We really appreciate it and we want to make sure that we're responding and taking every bit to continue to evolve how we're doing our outreach.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not an either or, it's an and.
It's exactly.
Small and big.
And we're also focused on the codes here. And so that is focusing on electrification in cars.
Mhm.
So that does seem like that's the only thing we're talking about, but in fact, that is one thing that we're talking about. We're trying to make sure that nothing else gets pushed off the plates. So I kind of want to reassure the public that we're trying to look at everything in our, with the bandwidth that we have.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Any other committee member updates? Karen, this is also a time that when committee members see something interesting in the press or something comes to their attention, it's an opportunity to share with others without having any Brown Act problems. Right. So going to ad hoc subcommittees.
I'd like to give a quick update. So on outreach, and please chime in, Phoebe, but with regard to 4th of July and some of the other events we've been doing, we've been trying to keep track of the type of impact we're having. So when we put the outreach plan together, we also put some goals there for how many residents we might come into contact with, calling them touches, and some other elements that are a little harder to track. But we set a very ambitious goal of 1,000 touches, which is hard to get when you're at the farmer's market connecting with 30 people at a time. But what I will say is the 4th of July event put a bigger dent in. So we're at about 200 touches. And we still have a couple of events coming up in the fall. So the Lions Club Car Show and Oktoberfest. So we'll see how we can really build momentum and grow that number. Another way that we talked about but just haven't had time to resource against is how we do outreach to different groups within Corte Madera, whether that's homeowners or other groups that are affiliated with the town. And clearly that can have a more amplifying impact. Maybe we get similar to the Lions Club presentation we did, you get 20 people in the room and we ask them to go tell 3 people, and we can amplify that and get those touches up. So that is what's on the, I would say, in view for the second half of the year, to do a couple of those events with groups. And then also, like I said, the car show and Oktoberfest. The other thing that I have been thinking about and would love any feedback, and we can certainly table it for future, is deep green as an example. We've done efforts in the past to try to increase deep green adoption. It's actually moved to 7%, but I think that's which is fantastic. It's partly probably due to the changes in how MCE is for new residents that Sebastian told us about. But I wonder if like a good old fashioned email chain would work. Like, hey, this is a really easy thing to do. You send it to 5 people. Can you send it to 5 people and see if we might actually get to more people that way?
Can we do that through Nextdoor? Maybe.
I mean, personally, but I don't.
Oh, the town doesn't have a Nextdoor. The county
Oh,
does.
we put out, yeah, we do have a Nextdoor account that we post to.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, certainly can
Just a
post,
thought.
but it doesn't, we don't get, well, I don't know if we need responses for that, but yeah.
How often do you use that account to post something?
Pretty, yeah, like Lorena posts every meeting on Nextdoor, and
We could try it.
yeah.
And come up with something with Sebastian, like a really pithy, like, because
Yeah.
for the people that have engaged with us at our booth, they're like, oh, all I do is, look at this QR code and how much is it a month? And it's really not a heavy lift. So maybe we talk more about that.
One other
I
question
have
about
a
the touches.
comment
is,
on that.
Can we count people going to the website, clicking on our page on the website as touches also?
Yeah, I think we are going to incorporate those. So it's just a matter of Martin and I updating those numbers.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we called them touches. I think we called them something else, but
We knew what you meant.
I think we just tagged them as impressions, which is what they are, but yeah, that counts too.
Good.
And Phoebe brought up a good point too, which is just because they don't engage with us doesn't mean that we're not building awareness about our committee and some of the things that we're promoting. So that is just a number we can't get at.
Right.
But that's definitely, we've definitely made an impact, I think, that way.
Karen, what were you going to say?
Martin.
Yeah, I have a comment. I guess, first of all, I want to say I'm an advocate of MCE. I think I know a lot about how the CPUC sets a stage for what utilities can do, and MCE has a lot more freedom to do a lot more, and I think it's just a great choice. I personally, if I don't know how many of you are familiar with CAISO, California Independent System Operator, and their scheduling of resources. But no matter how many people take deep green, if you're consuming energy after the sun goes down, and I know MCE tries, I think, to balance with hydro, it's not often available. And things have changed since I retired, but anyway, they don't always have to load match. My knowledge, and I could certainly check this, is that people would be doing, I mean, it's great to check off deep green, whatever, but the real key to decreasing natural gas on these peak times is to, don't conserve resources when the sun goes down, is stick within your, that peak period of 4 to 9, that it would have far more impact. And maybe that the general public, this is not them, than it would checking off deep green, actually. So that's and I can show you slides from the state and what happens, but it depends, it's certainly good, put more resources towards renewables. But in terms of really an impact of decreasing natural gas, because there are different kinds of renewables, this, don't consume during the peak time between 4 and 9 has, again, I would have to look at the specifics and what's changed since I retired, but I think that's more impactful.
That's really good. That's absolutely true. But one thing that is a plus as a ratepayer into MCE, if you're a deep green customer, that add-on actually goes towards programs as well. So that extra $3 or $4 is going towards developing additional renewable energy resources. So just that's something that most people, that they just miss that point. But that's so you're right about it. At night it's going to be brown energy. And so when we encourage people to charge at night, charge their cars at night at home, they're actually using dirty energy to do that.
Correct.
But becoming a deep green customer, the other benefit to the bigger picture is that it's helping to develop additional programs. I think both things.
We could go on, yeah. I think that would be great. If we can, yes.
Both and, absolutely. I was just saying that sort of for, FYI, not to argue your point at all.
And I don't mean to complicate it, but I just think, and maybe it is too complicated, but I think if people are aware of that 4 to 9 period, and I know a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, I think that's an easy.
MCE has actually been developing some good messaging around that. I've seen some good posts on LinkedIn recently. Those are ones that we could promote on the town's page as well.
I hear a headline coming up, Martin, for the Chronicles.
Yes, I agree. And the MCE is also getting power from the geysers, so that's another source in the future.
Yep, absolutely. Martin, do you have anything else to add on the subcommittee piece for us? Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Dave.
No, we're good.
Okay.
The policy subcommittee is working on some letters.
Yes, I discussed that with Leslie a little bit. We're doing some research on trying to find the best plan to approach first understand what we can do to help promote EV construction in private places.
Oh, great.
The shopping centers and so forth. And just, I've done some research trying to see who the owners are and what they're currently doing. So I can contact people that they're working with already and maybe get a better understanding of what might be the best method to prod them into.
Encourage them.
encourage them into doing good things for our environment.
Anything else on policy? No. That's it for updates and reports, unless there's something that we missed. Karen, we're organized in subcommittees. And there's two subcommittees.
Right.
Um,
They both
policy.
can't have
committee.
any additional members.
What's that?
They both have 3 members in them currently,
Oh,
so
not
there
our,
was,
you lost.
oh,
Meredith.
Meredith, Meredith, you're
Wait,
right.
last one.
You're right, so
We
the
have an
policy
opening.
subcommittee has 3 and then communications and engagement has 2.
I could see in the future having a subcommittee that deals with issues related to the grid, to PG&E, to electrical sourcing and all that sort of thing, which would allow us to expand. But just for example, just to take advantage of your expertise, Karen, among other things. And that can funnel into what we do in presentations and the other communications.
Maybe a topic for,
Or maybe, yeah, maybe we should reconsider, we pruned the number of subcommittees. Maybe they're with 2 new members. Certainly want to engage them to the level, whatever extent they want to be engaged. But maybe we should consider an ad hoc committee of some sort, maybe not a subcommittee, but an ad hoc, so that we don't leave anyone out in the cold.
Yeah, so the subcommittees are ad hoc subcommittees.
Well, okay then.
But yeah.
Maybe a third one then.
Consider reorganizing.
Yeah.
We can have that as an agenda
Yeah.
item. Yeah.
Okay, Karen, we can bring that up in our next meeting and we'll have our other new member as well, so we can.
Patrick would be there, and we could find out what his level of commitment ability is and expertise, and how that might blend with what we're considering.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, any suggestions for future agenda items that came out of our discussion today, or Phoebe, what's coming up?
So I don't have any other additional items. And the committee expressed interest in discussing the reach codes again. And so just to clarify,
Just looking at the draft
okay,
itself, just looking at the draft language of the ordinance, I think that
so, but you were gonna get me, or the policy subcommittee maybe is gonna look at that and get me some comments
okay,
ahead of time.
we could do that.
Yes,
Okay, so then the item would be reviewing those comments.
yes.
I make a suggestion there, like only items that are big enough that they warrant a group discussion. I think I would suggest that you guys just go back and forth if we're wordsmithing. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about, I wasn't really talking about wordsmithing.
No, I
Yes,
wasn't,
But, because I can get down into the weeds like that, but.
I was not suggesting you were wordsmithing. I'm just saying there's a lot of detail
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
And we want to reserve the time as a group to maybe tackle some of the bigger questions
point.
versus smaller, if there are.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting the
Yeah,
ones you
yeah.
highlighted.
no, I think that that's a good plan.
Okay,
And then what about some of the workshops that you're going to be engaging in August? Is that something we could get an update, or maybe there's interesting?
What's the sequence?
I have the,
Okay,
Because of the sequence.
I think the first one is on August 2nd.
Oh, okay, so we could. We can cover that in updates and reports too.
okay. And maybe it will only be a headline, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
it's there in case there's
Yeah.
something you want to go deeper on.
Yeah.
And then the subcommittee piece.
Okay. Any other topics for future agenda items? Karen, it's great to have you on board.
Yay.
Welcome. Okay, hearing none, I'll adjourn this meeting
Good.
until next month.